Hi guys, my name is Monette. Welcome back to my channel, Evolve with Monette. I am a professional intuitive empath, as well as a chef, a children's book author, and a life path 3. Today, I kind of want to have a little bit of church with you. I kind of want to talk about some things that have been going on for me and some of the metaphysical lessons that I've been dealing with. And they pertain to the title, of course, and that is with Mr. Nipsey Hussle. So this week, collectively as a world, we all attended a funeral service for someone who was prolific. He was so gifted. He was the type to go and get it. No kidding. And that is a quote from his almost eerily prophetic verse and song, Victory Lap. Nipsey was a great man, and I have so much respect for him and have had respect for him. And a lot of people, there's been a lot of chatter and banter about people jumping on the bandwagon now that he's gone, people deciding that they love him now that he's no longer here. But I remember him catching my attention years ago. And the reason that he caught my attention is because of the metaphysical principles that he espoused. Our spirituality is a uniting golden thread, meaning all races, all nationalities, all ethnicities. We all are asking deeper questions about what happens after we leave here. What happens when we move on? What's the purpose of our life? And the thing that captured my attention about Nipsey was that he was asking those questions while he was here. He was asking them when he was 12 years old and building that computer that he shouldn't have been building because he wasn't taught, he didn't know, but he was naturally brilliant. I've watched all of the comment sections in YouTube. I have mourned him. I have listened to the music. I was listening to it before I found out anything happened to him. And the reason I say that is, I mean, quite literally that day, I had started out my morning with Victory Lap because that kind of got me revved up for my little treadmill workout. And there are so many things that touched me that he said, but I also related to him because he's a Leo. I'm a Leo too, so I got Nipsey's energy, and I think we all did. Listen, I don't think that I have any revelation about who he was that you don't have, or that the think piece writers don't have, or that President Obama didn't ascertain from his daughters and from just hearing the music in the house, which, by the way, kind of really cool that Nipsey was bumping in the White House. I kind of love that so much. But that Leo energy is magnanimous. He is a helper. He is a giver. It also meant he had an ego. We saw that ego in the slap heard around the world when Nipsey was going into some kind of award show, and the person handling the cones decided to punch the cone or slap the cone out of his bodyguard's hand, and Nipsey pimp slap. I mean, it was like a real pimp slap to this guy. Now here, if you're new here and you're thinking, well, are you glorifying violence? Wasn't he a gangbanger? Nipsey was a survivor. Nipsey was a hustler. He literally built that into his name. I'm a hustler. He talked about how he was grinding his whole life, pay the price, hustle, sacrifice. And the thing about his words that have struck me since his passing is that, and bear with me guys, because even as I think about it, I tear up. So I might be using tissue as we do this video. But the thing that struck me about Nipsey is that he eerily predicted his own death. He eerily predicted the way he had to live. All my life, grinding all my life, sacrificed. Hustle paid the price. And here's where I want to make some connections. He was sacrificed. He was assassinated to me. He was murdered brutally. And it was in such a senseless way. He was quite literally helping out somebody. He was giving. He was doing what Jesus espoused for us to do. He was teaching. He was showing and leading by example. This wasn't a guy who just made moves that he didn't think about. This was a guy who understood the calling that was on his life. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. Do you understand the calling on your life? Do you understand when there is a breeze of greatness, a great wind that blows through, that whispers something to you that is for you to birth and bring forward? Nipsey was blessed because there were many things that he was able to bring forward. He was able to bring forward Vector 90, which taught kids from the inner cities how to code so that they could enter the stream of Silicon Valley and make a difference and be impactful within the next 10 to 20 years. This guy was a forward thinker. And I'm thinking about his death, and I was thinking about the time in the transition. He was 33. The correlations to Jesus have been made. Everybody's heard that. But I don't think that it's a far stretch. I grew up very grounded in Pentecostal Christianity. Now, I've unlearned and unindoctrinated myself from a lot of that to be the practitioner I am today. But what I will say is that Jesus was a prophet. And Jesus was teaching metaphysical principles. Jesus was Nipsey. And I know that seems blasphemous for all of you Christians that might tune in, but Jesus carried and taught and brought forth the spirit, the same spirit that Nipsey did. I am from you. I look like you. I can kind of commiserate with you. I can chop it up with you. I can kick you game from my father. See, Nipsey was tuned into a higher frequency. He was tuned into a higher power. He got that we were living in a multi-dimensional world. And when his mother said to us rather, in such comforting way, I mean, truly his mother got me through the worst part of the grieving. And then at the funeral, when she said, Nipsey now knows the mysteries to life. His energy is dispersed everywhere. He's having the most thrilling ride of his life. And I know my son, I know that he is beyond excited to now understand the mysteries of life that he always talked to me about. And our human brains and selves have a hard time processing that because we love him. For people in LA, I can't imagine their grief. I'm a girl that grew up in Florida, so I may not at all understand the deep pride that people have for Nipsey. I will tell you, I watched DJ Ghost on here. Shout out to DJ Ghost. Probably one of the most unlikely shout outs he'll ever get. But shout out to DJ Ghost, who actually put me on to Nipsey. I'm going to be very honest. Like, I've been watching Ghost for a while. He's a very popular YouTube here that does music reviews to hip hop and various music, right? So DJ Ghost, the way he spoke about him kind of lit me up. He was talking about how Nipsey was a motivator and a hustler and how he carried himself and how he looked like royalty. And I was like, I've never heard a hood dude talk on another dude like this. It was nothing but respect. And it reminds me of what Nipsey knew, and he said it in his verses. He said it in his words. Last time that I checked, there was no smut on my rep. Last time that I checked. And the last time that we checked, when Nipsey actually checked out, even though it was senseless and unwarranted and unexplainable, even to me as a person who tries to dive deep into spirituality, I still am hurt about that in my heart. I'm still hurt about it. And my thing about this for Nipsey is that from the moment he arrived, it sounds like from what his mother and his brother said, this kid was special. And I wanted to bring this forward to people that may not normally watch a video about a rapper, for you to understand that we put people in boxes and we say that this is who you are and this is who you shouldn't be and this is who you can be. And Nipsey broke out of every one of those boxes. He talked about how brilliant he was. He talked about the fact that he was a genius, the fact that nobody would recognize or hear that because he was a black kid out of the dirt. He said, like a rose, like a red rose from the concrete, I sprung up. Listen to his music, guys. I'm not so wise saying these things. These are things that Nipsey said to us. He left it for us like scripture, like Jesus. It was written. He spoke into existence. In Victory Lap, he talked about cruising on the bluest ocean and smoking Cuban cigars. He climbed the Mayan ruins. Guys, listen, for all my practitioners, you know that that is a mecca for people. That is a destination because of the spiritual alignment on the Earth's crust and the fact that there is some great power that's held there. It's the same way we believe with Stonehenge and other magical, energetic places. Nipsey had a purpose and a drive to get to these places at such a young age. And he was still hood, and he was still relatable, and he was still funny, and he was still brilliant. He was still brilliant. And then he brought back that information, these morsels, these nuggets. We heard about rappers and friends and dignitaries saying Nipsey recommended books to me. Nipsey was telling me to get onto this. I watched his interview on The Breakfast Club when it first came out. It was the first time I ever saw Charlemagne shut his mouth. God bless you, Charlemagne. But it's the first time I ever saw Charlemagne actually listen and have respect. And someone who has a message commands that kind of respect. And that's why those correlations are being made to Nipsey and Jesus, because for the people in the hood, this is a guy that taught them to elevate themselves, which is what Jesus was teaching. Muhammad, prophet, other prophets, Buddha, these prophets existed. These people came through. These people were absolutely here to leave something, and Nipsey did that. The thing that I want to talk about too is that he left right after his first Saturn return. For those of you that are not familiar with the principle of Saturn return, it takes Saturn, the planet, 28 and a half years to get back to the place in our chart from the time that we were born. And when that happens, we really come of age. Now in America, there is this long held belief that you come of age at 18. Now I am of West Indian descent, though I am an American citizen born here in America. I'm a first generation American. And so what I will say to you is that when you're dealing with coming of age in other cultures outside of America, you can live with your parents till you're in your 30s. It's not a big deal. You can be there until you're married. As long as you contribute and you're respectful, it's all good. What I will say with Nipsey and this first Saturn return is that he had come into himself. He had begun. You saw how he accelerated his progress, his output, everything churned up more right after about 28. He was always in the hood. He was always working. He was always grinding his whole life. He never lied. He never told us a single lie. And that is the legacy of a Leo too. And I want to talk about that too, the legacy. So I'm going to pop back there in a minute to wrap it up. But I want to say this about the Saturn return. We all have Saturn returns. We get 3 if we're lucky. We get 1 around 58 and a half and in our 80s if we live that long. And at the second one, you're asked to reflect back on what you created with your life and see if you'd like to make changes. The third one, a similar thing before you transition to where Nipsey is now. But the first one is when major things happen. So I want you to think about what was going on for you when you were 28 and a half, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. Those years, I describe them being a Florida girl like a hurricane. There are outer bands that happen, and it's just a tropical rain. It's a little bit of weather. It's a little bit of issue. And then we move closer to the center and everything gets quiet and still. But our life is in upheaval and we don't understand it. Now we can be purposeful like Nipsey was and have direction and make moves and be thinking ahead, or we can allow life to happen to us. Either way, we get our brain fog cleared up that we go through in our 20s when we're making all those terrible decisions, right about 28 and a half and going into the early 30s. Nipsey, when they say his potential was struck down too soon, we say that about people that die. I have never felt it more than I felt it for Nipsey, because he is a person who is going to be able to touch and affect people in a way that forever, literally, he met his life's mission. He will forever affect people. He will never be forgotten. And in a weird and cruel, bittersweet way, he achieved every goal he set out for because he started changing at that first Saturn return. I'm going to make another in-depth video about Saturn return, but I want you to remember this if you remember nothing else. You can YouTube it or Google it, Saturn return. It's our first coming of age. It happens at 28 and a half years old into our early 30s. For Nipsey, he had just gone through it. And what he chose to do was take life by the reins. And he chose to drive forward into the future with a vision for not just himself, but his community. And that is why I had to take a few minutes to talk about him today. And I want to end with his legacy. I read in one of the comments, somebody said, wow, he was so friendly with everybody. He had all these businesses and everything, but it seems like he deeply touched and affected everybody he encountered. And that is the beauty of being human. We have that ability. That is also happens to be a bit of a gift for Leos. We are very good at affecting people, but not just affecting people, really having a passion for our loved ones and really touching base with them and really checking in. And that is something that blew me away in the funeral when every person was like, yo, Nipsey just called me, his mom, his grandma, he brought me a green juice. He had a routine. I loved hearing that, because that's what we are all challenged to do, is leave a legacy. It's not just a Leo who can leave a legacy. It's not just a Nipsey who can leave a legacy. You can leave a legacy. When's the last time you did call in and check and say, this is what's really good? I love you so much. And you can have to kind of prioritize that schedule, and you're going to have to kind of figure out how to make those things happen. But at the end of life, I promise you, as Nipsey was there and he knew that he was going to go, because I feel like we all know that in the moment. We hear about near-death experiences. We don't know for sure. Only Nipsey now knows the secret. But I promise you, all he thought about was love. He didn't think about how angry he was at the dude. He didn't think about the men around him. He thought about Lauren and his babies and his mom and his grandma, his sister, and Nunu. That's who he thought about. And that's what you would think about when that moment comes. So I challenge you to live your life like Nipsey, follow his example, and put your heart out. Be vulnerable, be smart, be brilliant, be inventive, follow up on your ideas, and leave a legacy. So for today, I will say as I go that we all have to keep grinding. Nipsey has given us the blueprint, and that's real. So no matter what color, what race, what ethnicity, whether you like country and you want to be on an Old Town Road, or you want to take your victory lap, there is information that's here for you, left by someone who was brilliant, and who we were lucky enough, to know. All right, guys, that's all I have for you today. I will be following up with a video about Saturn returns and how you can recognize them and maximize them as well. And if you liked this, please leave me a comment below. Talk to me. I just want to talk to people about Nipsey. I just want to know how you felt while you were watching all of this go down. Were you a fan before? Did you become a fan after? What do you think about leaving a legacy? All right, come on back, guys, and we're going to continue to evolve together.